Hey guys, I'm just here to do a bit of a tutorial on how to get the gloss black enamel into the lettering of your stamped pieces. I know you guys have been having a little bit of trouble with getting the enamel to stay when wiping away the excess. What I'll do is go through a few different methods that I use, and hopefully you guys will get a little bit of insight on how I do it. Firstly, you guys will need your enamel gloss black. I find these are really good because once applied correctly, they hold up really well. You'll also need to get some makeup pads. I generally just use these because they're quite inexpensive and you can buy them from anywhere, any supermarket. Also, you guys will need to get some rubbing alcohol. Now, for the rubbing alcohol, I do use the Icicle brand, but I don't keep the bottle. So I've just printed out a picture of the one that I use. You can find these at any supermarket, but you can also find rubbing alcohol at Bunnings. So another thing I want to go over with you guys about the enamel paint is when you first purchase these, the consistency is quite thin and runny. This is normal when purchasing brand new. The more you sort of use it and the more you open and close it and it sort of sits there, the gluggier the consistency gets. Now personally I love it when it's thicker. I find the thicker the paint, the easier it is to have stay in the impression when wiping away the excess. For the video though, what I'll do is I'll use a brand new one. So it is harder to apply when it's brand new and the consistency is thin. So I will use this so that you guys can see how I do this. What I do is I grab my stamped piece. I will grab my enamel paint and make sure the rest of what I need is close by. Basically, with the enamel paint, I'm not really too careful about where I get the enamel paint. I'm not too concerned about only getting it in the impression. I will just paint over the whole thing, but I'll make sure that enough paint will go into all the impressions. So once I've done that, I just grab a wipe and I'll just wipe it off. Now it's important not to put any rubbing alcohol at this stage. If you mix rubbing alcohol with the wipe at this stage, you will more likely have the letters come out. So what I do is I just give it a quick wipe, and as you can see, the letters have been blackened. Now there is a lot of residue left over and this is fine. This is how my pieces generally look, and I'll leave this sitting here for about 5 to 10 minutes. You don't want to have your pieces sitting like that longer than that because it does make it a bit more difficult to get the excess off. And also these paints are quite harsh in chemicals, so if you leave it sitting on the gold and rose gold pieces for too long, it will start to discolour those pieces. So while that's sort of sitting there waiting for 5 to 10 minutes, generally I'll just move on to the next piece and sort of start doing other things just to sort of kill the time. It only really needs to be touch dry as opposed to the 16-hour dry time. Don't leave it on for 16-hour dry time until the full piece is clean. So for video purposes, because I'm being quite impatient, I'll wipe it away now and see how we go. So what I normally do is I grab another wipe and I'll put a dab of rubbing alcohol. Now I don't use too much, sometimes even just one pump is a little bit too much, so I'll dab it onto another thing just to absorb the excess away, and then I'll sort of rub it. If you use too much rubbing alcohol, you can sometimes start stripping away your letters even if they have sat there for a while. So I make sure to go in and around the piece properly and get rid of all the black that's left over anywhere, because not only is it around the letters, it sometimes can get in between the piece as well. So as you can see, I've gotten rid of all the excess and the paint that was left over, and you've just got the blackened letters now. What I'll do also is put that aside again and allow that to dry for the proper 16 or 12 to 16 hours and before I wipe over with a polished cloth. I do like to get rid of obviously all the fingerprints and everything and use the polished cloth at the last minute, but I will not really do that until it's completely dry. So I'll go through my next method of blackening now. Basically it's sort of the same sort of thing, except when wiping away the excess there is a bit of a different process. So obviously start by grabbing your piece and your paint. Whoop. So again, I just go over each letter, making sure that paint has gotten into all of the impressions. Now, instead of wiping it away with the dry wipe, what I'll do in this stage is just give it a dab. Now, this is really good for when you're using the standard range, which is 1mm thickness, because the impression that you get when stamping a thinner piece is not quite as deep when used, like as opposed to using the premium piece. This sometimes can make it really difficult to blacken the thinner the piece. So basically, as you can see, there is quite a lot of excess left over. Again, this is okay for about 5 to 10 minutes. On the gold and rose gold pieces, I wouldn't be leaving it any longer than that. What I've done for video purposes is put another one together that has been sitting there for a little while. Because this method is more used when your impression is not deep, it is better to leave this for the full 10 minutes. Now, by leaving it for the full 10 minutes, you will find it a little bit more difficult to get the excess off, and I'll just go through the method that I use for that. So I'll just grab, again, a wipe, and I'll just use a little bit of rubbing alcohol. Again, I don't really want to use too much, so I sometimes absorb it up with a different wipe. So this one will take a little tiny bit more elbow grease, but just kind of work around the piece and the letters, just trying to get that excess away. There you go. And as you can see, again, the letters have come up black. Now, I do find that the dabbing process as opposed to the wiping process can sometimes be a little bit more effective if your letters aren't, if they're not as deep. So here are our pieces all finished and blackened. Hopefully you guys have been able to get a little bit of insight out of our video. Please feel free to contact us if you guys do have any more questions.